All right, let's jump right in. Have you ever thought about redemption as a transaction? It's a fascinating idea, right? Today, we're going to unpack a really specific theological framework that looks at salvation not as one single event, but as a series of 7 distinct purchases. The idea is that every moment of Christ's suffering was actually a specific payment for a unique spiritual benefit. It's a whole different way of looking at it.
Okay, so to really get our heads around this, we have to start with the word redeem itself. What does it actually mean? Well, the teaching we're looking at uses this really simple, powerful analogy. Think about a pawn shop. You've got something you value, something precious, and you have to go buy it back. That's the core idea here. Redemption is, quite literally, a buyback. But here's where it gets really interesting. For this divine buyback, we're not talking about your usual currency. It wasn't silver, it wasn't gold. According to this teaching, the payment was something infinitely more valuable, something totally unique. As the scripture says, it was paid with precious blood.
So, how are we going to break this down? First, we'll look at this idea of a purchase. Then, we'll go through the events: the blood in the garden, the payment through pain, the crown and the cross, and finally, the last transaction.
Okay, first up, redemption as a purchase. We really have to understand this concept of a one-of-a-kind currency.
So, why precious? What makes this blood so incredibly valuable? Well, this teaching lays out a really specific theological argument. It says that a sin nature, think of it as a kind of spiritual inheritance, gets passed down from Adam, but only through the male line. Now, since Jesus didn't have an earthly father, that chain was broken. You see? This is what, according to this framework, made his blood a spotless, holy currency, the only kind of payment that would actually work for this divine transaction. All right, on to the second part: blood in the garden. This is where the first payment is said to have been made.
So the story starts in this moment of just intense anguish. The teaching points to Jesus' prayer in Gethsemane being so stressful, so agonizing, that the tiny blood vessels in his forehead literally burst. His sweat became mixed with blood, and this right here is identified as the very first installment, the first payment in this whole process.
Okay, so a payment was made, but what did it buy? What was the purchase? According to this framework, it secured the legal right for Jesus to step into your prayer life and to guarantee that your prayers are heard. It's like it opened a direct, unbreakable line of communication.
Next up, payment through pain. Here, we're looking at 2 specific purchases that were made through physical suffering.
And this is where the teaching gets incredibly specific. It draws a line between 2 kinds of suffering. On one side, you have the bruising from being beaten and punched. That internal damage is said to have purchased freedom from our internal problems. Our personal failings, those deep-seated iniquities, and all that inner torment and fear. Then, on the other side, you have the stripes from the scourging. Those external wounds, the torn flesh, are said to have purchased the legal right to physical healing from any sickness or disease. See the distinction? Internal for internal, external for external.
All right, moving on to section 4, a crown and a cross. Now we're going to look at 3 more purchases, each one tied to a powerful symbol of the crucifixion. First, that crown of thorns. Now this teaching says it's way more than just a cruel joke. It actually connects it all the way back to Genesis, right after the fall of man, when the ground was cursed to produce thorns. So when they smash that crown on his head, it's seen as a symbolic act of him literally taking that curse upon himself. So what's the purchase? Well, by taking on the symbol of the curse, the blood from those thorns is said to have bought our redemption from that curse. We're talking freedom from what this teaching calls the curse of the law, that cycle of poverty, struggle, and failure, whether it's something personal or something passed down through generations.
Okay, let's talk about the spikes in his hands. Again, this isn't just about the physical pain. In this view, it's deeply connected to the work of our hands. Everything we do, everything we build, everything we touch.
And the purchase? It's the legal right for everything your hands do to be blessed. Your job, your projects, even the act of giving, all of it is now supposed to be prosperous and successful because of that payment.
And it's the same idea with his feet. The spike driven through his feet is connected to our path in life, right? Where we walk, the direction we take, our spiritual journey. So this purchase gives you the power to walk in the light, to stay on the right path and not get lost in darkness. It's basically securing a divinely guided life.
And that brings us to our final section, the final transaction. This is the last and ultimate purchase, and this one isn't just for individuals, it's for the entire collective. Think about this. Even after he had died, there was one more act. A Roman soldier takes a spear and pierces his side, and the scripture says, "Out came water and blood." This moment is seen as absolutely pivotal, the final, deeply symbolic part of the transaction. So what could this last payment possibly buy? The big one. The whole shebang. It purchased the right to cleanse the entire body of believers, the church, to present it as a holy and glorious bride. It's about collective purification, making the entire community spotless. So let's just do a quick recap. It's a lot to take in. What we've got here is a complete breakdown. You have the sweat in Gethsemane buying the right to answered prayer, the bruising for deliverance from iniquity, the stripes for physical healing, the crown of thorns to break the curse, the nails in his hands to bless your work, and the nails in his feet to guide your path. And finally, the spear in his side for a purified church. It's an incredible, detailed spiritual ledger. And that's the whole framework. It really leaves you with a big question to chew on, doesn't it? When you frame salvation this way as a kind of divine transaction, a spiritual economy, what does that do to your view of faith? How does thinking in terms of payments and purchases change how you see your relationship with God? Something to think about.